All right, guys, welcome back. What we're going to go ahead and do is now we've already went over an overview of Windows Azure, what all that means. We went over creating a server for our SQL database. We created our databases. We downloaded Visual Studio 2013. We added, went and got the Windows Azure SDK. We then created a SQL data project, created our database, configured our firewall. Then we went ahead and created our data project, created our tables using the designer. We generated our script. We created profiles for our staging database and our production database. And then we published both of those. And then we also configured our project for Windows Azure. Okay, our data project. Now what we're going to do is we want to access that data. So go up to File, let's do New Project, and we're going to create a WCF service application. We're going to call this blog dot, let's just call it blog.services, right? Call it whatever you need when you're doing it, but create the directory for the solution, okay? WCF. It's going to come up with a temp, right, of everything that you already have here. This is just a sort of a shell to guide you a little bit. But first, we need to make a connection to our database. So we're going to go ahead and connect to our database. Tools, connect to database. Put in your database actual server name. Then I'm going to go ahead and put in my information here. And then I'm going to put in my password. I'm going to click Save My Password so that I don't have to deal with that. You can click Test Connection, but that's redundant because when you click this down arrow, it's going to go ahead and look at what database. So just click Blog. They're both the same at this point, right? And then click OK. So it's going to go ahead and create my connection over here. And you click that down arrow, you'll be able to see your tables, created stored procedures. Those are going to show up here. So what we need to do inside of a services project is we need a layer that's going to model what we have here in our Server Explorer. For blog and comment, we need something to be able to map that, right, to an entity model. So we can either go ahead and create an NHibernate or Fluent API and sort of go through and create our modeling that way with a whole bunch of DTOs, or we can create a DBML, which isn't, the best, but it actually can get you up and going pretty quickly. Or you can create an EDMX, entity data model, right? XML file, which is going to be your configuration. So you're going to right-click Services, and we're going to create this data model, right? So we have data already in our server. We have a database. We have what the domain of those are. So meaning blog ID, blog name, blah, blah, blah. So what we need to do now is we clicked Add, New. We go up here to Data. And then we're going to go ahead and do a link to SQL classes. We're just going to do a DBML real quick. EDMX is pretty much going to be working off entity, and that's going to create an XML file inside. You're going to see your table mappings. Sort of what you do with NHibernate, but a little bit different. So we're going to go ahead and click Data Classes. We're going to call this blog DB. Okay, Add. Now we're going to have interfaces. And we're going to have interface implementation. Interfaces is what's going to be our API. So, well, our API is basically what we're going to be showing. What I just had to go ahead and send a text so that people weren't loud when they came in. Okay, so what we have here. Services, we're going to have an interface, which is what's going to interface with anyone, the client consuming our application services. And then we're going to have an implementation, right? So implementation is actually, we're going to stub out the methods signatures, and then we're going to actually do the implementation behind the scene. Okay, so let's go back to the blog DB. This is where we're going to build our model. Go over to Server Explorer after we made our connection and click on blog, pull it over here real quick. Now it looks super simple. Oh, I got a cool box, right? But what ended up happening in Visual Studio is Visual Studio created all the maps for that. So let's go back, and we're going to add comments. So click and hold and pull over. And you're going to see that there's going to be a line across here, and the comment ID, right, is not the foreign key. The blog ID is the foreign key, which relates to this here, right? So we got that done. Click Save, Control S. And then over here is where you would drag your stored procedures or anything that you already defined, right? So let's go ahead and save this. Go back to your Solution Explorer. I'm going to downsize the references because when I added that DBML, it went ahead and added all the different data.link, all the different references to the assemblies that I'm going to need. So now we have this DBML. Inside our web config is our connection. Okay. If you click the DB designer, which is underneath DBML, you're going to see this is what the computer auto-generated, Visual Studio auto-generated for your classes, for the updates, for the notifications. In Hibernate, you do this a little bit differently. You actually go through and do most of the mapping and stuff by hand. So you have a little bit more control in that case, but a DBML will serve for us to get us up running real quick. Okay. So service. Here's our implementations, right? This is what I mean by implementation, is you're actually performing an action on the data. The interface is actually where you're defining your service contracts and your operation contracts. So you're saying, hey, this is the service that you can use. And you're saying, hey, these are the operations that the client can do, right? Everything else behind that is a black box. So let's go ahead. We're on 6 minutes here, and composite types is going to go away because I deleted those other things down there. We don't need them. Neither do we need this, but I'm going to keep these others under here so that you can see. So in methods, when you create a method, you have what they call a method signature. Method signature is going to define what the return type is, what the name of the method is, and what the parameters and their types are that are being passed in. So right now for this blog, we're going to go ahead and type in, we're going to want to be able to get a blog, right? So we're going to do blog, and then we're going to do get blog. And then we have a unique identifier, which is the key. So we're going to type in int, and then we're going to call this blog ID. This is Pascal casing with lower b and then the humpback in the back, right? So we got a method signature. We know that on the signature, we're going to return type blog using a parameter type int that I'm going to pass in. And then we want to actually be able to create one of these, right? So we want to just know if it's successful or not. So create blog. We're going to create a method called create blog since we don't have any blogs in there yet, right? So we're going to go ahead and type in, we don't need to create the ID. What we do need is we need a string, Server Explorer over here. Click the blog so we know what we're needing over here. String the blog name, right? Blog name, comma, string description, okay? And then we're going to do date time type. This is going to be created DT. And then what we're going to go ahead and do is finally we're going to do a bool for our active or not active, which is going to be serve as our soft delete. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and this is our interface. So when the client goes out and searches and adds a service reference to his project, it's going to see that these two are available, right? And it's going to say, okay, I know what I need and I know what I'm getting back. So let's go to the service now, the implementation, and let's work on this. I'm going to delete these out that were the default. We're going to add our own, right, to match up to those method signatures. So under here,